Welcome. So, in emergency medicine, you've got drugs that are like safety nets, and then you have drugs that are more like walking a tightrope. Today, we are talking about one of the most high-stakes tightropes out there, Flumazenil. You get this right, you look like a hero. But if you get it wrong, well, the consequences can be absolutely catastrophic. So let's break this thing down.
Okay, picture this. You're in the ER. A patient gets rolled in, totally unconscious. The story you're getting points to a benzodiazepine overdose. And you know there's an antidote, a reversal agent that could have them awake in literally minutes. But here's the million-dollar question. Do you actually give it? The answer, as you're about to see, is way more complicated than a simple yes or no.
So to figure that out, here's our roadmap. First, we'll cover the basics. What even is Flumazenil? Then we'll zoom in for the molecular showdown at the receptor. We'll get into the really high-stakes risks, how to use it safely, what to tell a patient after, and then the big one, the #1 board exam trap that catches everyone. All right, let's start building that foundation. Section 1. What exactly is this drug we're talking about? You can think of Flumazenil as a molecular sniper. It's got one target and one mission. It's a competitive benzodiazepine antagonist. That means its whole reason for being is to go in and fight against the effects of sedative drugs. Things like Valium, Xanax, or Versed.
So when do we actually use it? Well, its first big use is for reversing procedural sedation. Waking a patient up after something like a colonoscopy where they got a benzo. The second, and this is key, is for a known, isolated benzodiazepine overdose, and I'm stressing isolated for a reason. And finally, you might hear about it being used as a diagnostic tool for a coma of unknown cause. But this is super risky and almost never done today for reasons that are about to become very, very clear.
Okay, now for the really cool part. Let's zoom way in, down to the molecular level. To really get Flumazenil, you have to see this elegant little battle that it wages right there at the synapse.
So first you gotta understand the poison to understand the antidote, right? In our brain, the main brake pedal is a neurotransmitter called GABA. When GABA binds to its receptor, the GABA-A receptor, it opens up a channel, lets negative ions in, and basically tells the neuron to chill out. It's the brain's natural calm down signal.
All right, here's how it all plays out. First, a benzodiazepine comes along. Now, it doesn't replace GABA, it just binds to a different spot on that same receptor and basically supercharges it. It makes GABA's braking power way stronger, and that's what causes sedation. Then in comes Flumazenil. It swoops in and binds to the exact same spot as the benzodiazepine, but here's the twist. Flumazenil does absolutely nothing on its own. It's like putting the wrong key in a lock. It fits, but it won't turn. And by just sitting there, it physically blocks the benzos from binding. It kicks them off and poof, their sedative effects are reversed. It's a beautiful, elegant competition.
And that brings us to, without a doubt, the most important part of this whole discussion. Section 3, the high-stakes world of contraindications. Honestly, knowing when not to use Flumazenil is probably more important than knowing how to use it. This right here is your decision-making cheat sheet. On one side, you can think about using it. That's when you are 100% sure it's an isolated benzo overdose or when you're reversing sedation that you gave. But on the other side, this is when you avoid it at all costs. An overdose with unknown drugs? Nope. A patient who uses benzodiazepines long-term? Absolutely not. And this is a huge one. If there's any chance they also took a tricyclic antidepressant, don't even think about it. And just to be crystal clear, here are the hard stops, the big red flags. If your patient has a known seizure history, a TCA overdose, or if they've been physically dependent on benzos for more than a couple of weeks, giving Flumazenil is absolutely contraindicated. Why? Because you can trigger a total disaster.
And here it is. The #1 most feared risk is seizures. See, benzodiazepines are fantastic anticonvulsants. For someone who is dependent on them or who's taken another drug that makes seizures more likely, like a TCA, those benzos are literally the only thing holding a seizure back. If you come in and abruptly rip that protection away with Flumazenil, you unmask all that risk and can trigger a massive seizure. A seizure that's now almost impossible to treat because you've just blocked the receptor for your go-to anti-seizure medication.
Okay, so let's say we've done our homework, we've screened the patient, and we've decided it is in fact safe to move forward. How do we actually do it? Let's get into Section 4, using Flumazenil safely. Here are the key numbers you need to know. It's given IV, intravenously. The onset is wicked fast. We're talking 1 to 2 minutes, which is why it feels so dramatic when it works. The starting dose is tiny, just 0.2 milligrams, but look at that duration, about 20 minutes.
Please, burn that number into your brain. It is the single most important thing on this slide, and we're definitely coming back to it.
So, the protocol for giving it is super methodical. First, you assess. You check again and again for any contraindications. If you're all clear, you don't just slam in a big dose. You titrate. You give it slowly, in tiny little increments to avoid a sudden shock to the system. And then, and this is so important, you monitor. Your job is not over when the patient opens their eyes.
In fact, that monitoring leads us straight into our next section. The conversation you absolutely must have with the patient, or maybe their family, right after you've given the drug.
You've got to be able to explain what's happening in plain English. These are your key teach-back points. Number 1, you warn them about resedation. Hey, this medication we gave you is going to wear off pretty quickly and you might get really sleepy again. That's why we need to watch you so closely. Number 2, be upfront about the risks. We're also watching for any serious side effects like a seizure. And finally, you make them part of the team. Please, tell a nurse right away if you start to feel confused or agitated or just unwell.
All right, we have made it to the final section. This is where we put it all together. This is the big clinical pearl, the thing you have to know, and it's also the most common board exam trap related to flumazenil. So I'll just ask you straight up. After everything we've just talked about, what do you think is the single biggest mistake a clinician can make with this drug?
And the answer, which this slide makes painfully obvious, is the duration mismatch. Remember that 20-minute duration we burned into our memory? Now look at it right next to a common benzo like midazolam, which can hang around in the body for hours. The antidote is gone long before the drug it's reversing.
The trap is thinking your job is done when the patient wakes up. It's not. The patient wakes up, you feel like a rock star. But then 30 minutes later, the flumazenil is gone. That original benzodiazepine is still floating around, and it just hops right back onto those GABA receptors. The patient gets sleepy again, their breathing slows down again, and you are right back at square one. Or maybe even worse.
So we're going to end with the one sentence you have to remember. If you take nothing else away from this, remember this quote. Reversing the sedation is not the same as reversing the overdose. Flumazenil is not a cure. It's a temporary fix. It buys you a brief window of opportunity, but it does not make the underlying problem go away. And understanding that difference, well, that's what makes you a safe and effective clinician.